Admissions officer slash essay coaches of Reddit. What was the most pretentious application you've ever seen? I got to interview some students for a special program in my undergrad. It was highly competitive and lots of people wanted it. Young woman comes in. I offer her a seat. I'd prefer to stand. This won't take long. It won't? No. My dad is the dean of one of the colleges, and my mom is one of the professors who established this program. I'm getting in. I emphasized that she really should take a seat. She refused again. So I say, hey, this interview, me approving you is part of the process. You have to do well in this to get in. You'll say I did well, or my parents will make life hell for you. Her parents had zero impact on anything in my life, and I told her as much. After articulating this to her, I said, I'm going to give you a chance to walk out the door and restart this interview. Fresh start. She lost it and yelled at me for like 5 minutes. I filled out the interview sheet with direct quotes from her tantrum. She didn't get in. A few days after decisions were made, I got an email from her father, who was, in fact, a dean. He asked me to come in and have a chat with him. It was totally a request. I went to talk to him. When I went to see him, he had a copy of the interview sheet where I had several direct quotes from his daughter. Some of the quotes were awful and directed at me, my family, and basically everything she could hit on. He apologized profusely for his daughter and asked if she could redo the interview. He was leaning on me a bit at this point. I told him that choices had already been made and she was not selected. The whole thing was mind-blowing. She was so entitled. I worked in a very religious private school's admissions department for a few weeks, filing applications. The parents had to write a letter about their child and why the school would suit them. I'll always remember the man who wrote 3 pages about how successful a businessman he was, how he owned several businesses, how good he was at the school's main sport, and then attached a large check to the last page. Not a word about the kid. What I remember most? The rejection letter from the principal with a thinly veiled insinuation that bribery was immoral and not acceptable at this school. I went to space camp on a scholarship program after writing an essay to get in. One of the kids in my group, who time and time again proved he wasn't smart enough to write his own essay, bragged about how his mother wrote his and he didn't even want to be there. Messed up on both their parts to take away an opportunity from someone who actually wanted to go. A similar, although not quite as bad, thing happened in my school. This kid was in a program with a guaranteed acceptance, so long as you scored high enough on the entrance exam, and were even a semi-normal person at the interview. Well, he came into the interview, and was a total dick. He told the student that he was already accepted, so he was just looking around at where he'd spend the next few years of his life. He also dropped multiple fucks in responses, which is just a huge interview no-no. He didn't get in. I used to help out with auditions for the acting program at my school, and one girl came in with a scented resume. Before she walked in, the head of acting was like during the interview, do not mention the resume. She was not a good actor. The scented resume was clearly something she thought was cute and charming enough to score her some personality points. Nope. I'm a college admissions consultant, and the worst one I've read was a full meter essay about how much the applicant loved college admissions and writing admissions essays. It was arrogant and aloof throughout, but the kicker was when the student called herself an elite applicant with outstanding admissions essay skills right there in the essay. I felt sorry for her because it felt like the stress of the process had given her a Stockholm Syndrome obsession with it. I tried to bring her back to reality gently, but she wasn't having it. She didn't get in. I used to tutor at uni and helped occasionally with my TT's applications. One thing I always encouraged them to do was to mention their aspirations after graduating, and to mention why specifically this university. One kid, who'd been a pretentious ass the whole time, actually wrote in his essay that he didn't really care about the academic part because his dad was just going to give him a job when he graduated anyways. He chose the unis he was applying to based on how impressive they sounded and how good the party life was. I kept in touch with his sister. She was super smart and studied the same subject as me, so I helped her out with career advice etc. later on. She dropped into conversation later with a noticeable bit of glee, that her brother was going through a challenging patch because his father informed him that no, daddy was not going to give him a free ride into a cushy job and did expect him to get a real job. Not an admissions officer, but I have evaluated placement essays for first year writing, first semester, second semester, or in rare cases, tested out completely. I remember reading one about how selfies were important because of such reasons as so people can know where you are, and if you travel you can use them to take pictures of monuments and landmarks. This student essentially, though I'm not sure intentionally, made the argument that every picture that is taken has to be a selfie, and if they weren't in the picture it wasn't worth anything. I put them in first semester. I was a medical school interview coach, earning some extra money through med school. Some applicants were great, others were what you'd expect from kids whose parents are paying a tutor to teach them how to act normal. Our med school interviews are easy to pass, but difficult to do well in. They involve generic questions like your passion or interests, ethical scenarios, decision-making questions, knowledge of healthcare topics, etc. There have been memorable answers to mock questions. In terms of pretentious, I asked one guy what his hobbies were, and he said he loved Armani suits and buying expensive coffee blends. Not a great answer, but what killed it was that he began describing the smoothness of the bean and licking and smacking his lips together in wet squelching noises. Another applicant's dad was a successful surgeon, so he argued in his answers I basically already know how to be a doctor through osmosis. He'd failed the entrance exam 7 times and his dad opened a lot of doors for him, getting him research editor positions for his CV, etc. There were complex family dynamics. He would say really inappropriate things like, when I'm a doctor, I can buy and sell you and all your friends, all I have to do is pass this stupid exam and interview and my dad will get me a spot in the training program. You'll be struggling for years. He'd then flip to complaining for half an hour about how his sister gets treated like a princess and call me at 10 PM just to talk. I declined further sessions, but was pretty sympathetic, to be honest. Whenever his dad called to arrange sessions and materials, he was very pejorative toward his son. I had trouble hearing him during one of the phone calls because of background noise until he stepped outside. Later found out that he had been calling me, a tutor, during his son's graduation ceremony. He missed his son going on stage to receive his diploma because he was arranging a booking time with me. It placed a lot of his son's defensive behavior in context. And no, he has not been accepted into a med school. That was 2 years ago, and he emailed only a few weeks ago to request access to my Google Drive to brush up on some things. I granted it, because when your answer to a conflict in teamwork question is, I'd tell them I'm sorry that they're wrong, no amount of Microsoft Word documents will change your performance. Obligatory, not an admissions counselor, but I was a master's student who helped a family friend's high schooler edit her college admission essay. The prompt was something about the greatest struggle they've experienced that made them who they are. Her response? My greatest struggle in life was that I was too academically advanced for my age, and I was not challenged enough in school. Yikes. Like and subscribe if you'd like to see more, and have a great day.